They told you 7 o'clock. You got there at 6:55 because you actually wanted to be on time. You ordered your food, you checked your phone. 7:15, 7:30. Finally, at 7:42, the door opens and in they walk, phone in hand, looking genuinely apologetic, saying the exact thing they have said every single time this has happened. I am so sorry. I just completely lost track of time. And the most bewildering thing is they mean it. You can see they mean it. They're not performing remorse. They're genuinely confused about how it keeps happening, genuinely surprised that 7 p.m. arrived when it did, and genuinely unable to explain why the same experience repeats itself with mathematical consistency across years of your relationship. So, who is this person? Are they disrespectful, narcissistic, self absorbed? Are they secretly telling you that your time doesn't matter? Today, we are going into the actual neuroscience of chronic lateness. What is happening in the brain? What researchers at Medical University of South Carolina, San Diego State University, and other institutions have discovered about the psychological and neurological mechanisms behind this pattern, and what it actually means. Not what we assume it means, but what the science says it means. The answer is more complicated, more empathetic, and more surprising than almost anyone expects. The most important thing to establish at the beginning of this conversation is a concept that most people have never heard of, but that completely changes how we understand chronic lateness: time blindness. Dr. Russell Barkley is one of the world's leading researchers on ADHD and executive function. With decades of work conducted primarily at the Medical University of South Carolina and subsequently referenced in virtually every major ADHD research institution globally. His description of time blindness is clinical, precise, and transformative for understanding the chronically late person. Time blindness, as Barkley defines it, is a neurological condition in which the individual's ability to perceive and anticipate the passage of time is fundamentally impaired. It is not a personality trait. It is not laziness or poor planning. It is a failure of a specific cognitive system, the brain's internal clock, to generate the felt, visceral sense of time passing that most people take completely for granted. To understand what time blindness actually feels like, consider this. Most people experience time as a continuous felt dimension. They can sense when an hour has passed. They have an internal experience of time accumulating, of future events approaching with a felt urgency that grows as the moment approaches. 7 p.m. is not just a number on a schedule, it is a felt destination that the brain continuously calibrates toward, generating increasing urgency as it approaches. For a person with time blindness, this felt dimension is largely absent. Barkley describes their experience of time as existing in only two states, now and not now. The future appointment exists in the not now category until it suddenly, without warning, becomes now. At which point the person is almost always unprepared. They did not experience the time passing. They did not feel the approach of the deadline. They were simply in the present moment, and then suddenly the deadline was upon them. Barkley estimates that a significant proportion of chronically late people, particularly those with ADHD, which affects an estimated 4.4% of adults in the United States, experience exactly this phenomenon. This is not metaphorical. Brain imaging studies have documented reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex during prospective time estimation tasks in individuals with ADHD. The same region responsible for planning, future projection, and the management of time perception. To tell a person with time blindness to just be more organized is analogous to telling a colorblind person to just look harder. The instrument required to execute the instruction is the one that is impaired. Separate from the neurological dimension of time blindness, researchers have identified a cognitive pattern that affects many chronically late people regardless of neurological profile. What psychologists call optimistic time estimation bias, and what planning researcher Roger Buehler at Wilfrid Laurier University famously termed the planning fallacy. Buehler's research, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology and subsequently replicated across multiple studies, demonstrated that people consistently and systematically underestimate the time required to complete future tasks, even when they have direct prior experience with identical tasks taking longer than predicted. The brain, when estimating future task duration, tends to construct an idealized scenario named no interruptions, no unexpected complications, maximum efficiency, rather than drawing on the realistic distribution of outcomes from past experience. For most people, this bias is moderate and manageable. For chronically late individuals, it appears to operate in an amplified form. A comprehensive study by Jeff Conte at San Diego State University, examining the relationship between personality types and lateness, found that people who score high on what he calls the Type B personality profile, generally relaxed, multi-focused, less driven by deadlines, showed significantly higher rates of optimistic time estimation bias compared to Type A individuals. The practical consequence is predictable. The chronically late person genuinely believes every single time that they have enough time. They are not lying when they say this, they are wrong, but they are sincerely wrong. Their internal time model generates optimistic predictions that their real world experience has repeatedly contradicted and that their brain continues to generate unchanged. Each preparation cycle begins with the same false certainty. There is enough time. There is almost never enough time. This combination, time blindness at the neurological level and optimistic bias at the cognitive level, produces an individual who is not simply disorganized, but is operating with an internal time model that is structurally inaccurate. No amount of motivation or intention resolves a hardware problem through software effort alone. There is a third explanation for chronic lateness that is less sympathetic and deserves honest examination: avoidance psychology. For a subset of chronically late individuals, the lateness is not primarily a neurological or cognitive issue. It is a behavioral symptom of anxiety-driven avoidance. The late arrival delays the moment of entering a situation that creates anxiety. It provides a few extra minutes of distance from a social environment, a professional setting, or an interpersonal situation that the person finds threatening. This pattern is documented in research on social anxiety and general anxiety disorders. The lateness functions as an approach avoidance behavior. The person wants to attend the event, maintains the intention to arrive, but experiences a progressive difficulty in initiating the departure as the moment approaches. One more thing needs to be done. The outfit isn't quite right. Something was forgotten. The anxiety is generating reasons to delay, and the person, often without full conscious awareness, is complying. Dr. Linda Sapadin, a psychologist whose research has examined chronic lateness through the lens of psychological motivation rather than neurology, identifies several distinct lateness personality profiles, including what she calls the perfectionist who is late because nothing is ever quite ready enough, the crisis maker who experiences a kind of vague arousal from the urgency of last-minute rushes, and the pleaser who takes on too many commitments and is chronically overcommitted across all of them. These profiles share an important characteristic. The lateness serves a psychological function. It is not random or meaningless, it is an expression of something. Anxiety, perfectionism, a distorted relationship with time and urgency that the person may not have examined or named. Understanding which of these mechanisms is operating, neurological time blindness, optimistic bias, or anxiety-driven avoidance, is the essential diagnostic step before any change is possible. And importantly, each has a completely different set of evidence-based interventions. We must also examine the social and relational dimension of chronic lateness. Because regardless of its neurological or psychological origin, its impact on others is real and deserves acknowledgement. Research by Jana Drua, published in the European Journal of Social Psychology on the social meaning of lateness, found that in Western cultures, while arriving late to a scheduled commitment is consistently interpreted as a signal that the late person values their own time more than the time of those waiting. This interpretation is often inaccurate. As we've established, chronically, late people typically have no such conscious intention, but its emotional impact is real and legitimate. The person who has waited for 45 minutes has genuinely lost 45 minutes of their life. Their food has cooled. Their anticipation has turned to frustration. They have checked their phone repeatedly and experienced the social discomfort of appearing to be waiting for someone who hasn't arrived. None of that experience is negated by the late person's neurological explanation. This is the essential complexity of chronic lateness, the psychological reality of the late person. Time blindness, no optimistic bias, anxiety, is genuine and deserves compassion. And the impact on the person waiting is also genuine and deserves acknowledgement. Both things are true simultaneously. The trap that many chronically late people fall into is allowing the explanation to function as an exemption from accountability. Understanding why the pattern exists does not remove the responsibility to work on it. It provides the correct framework for working on it, which is far more effective than the incorrect framework of simply trying harder. But work is still required. Research on intervention and strategies for time blindness and related patterns shows the most effective approaches include body doubling, backward time planning starting from the commitment rather than the preparation, externalizing time cues through multiple environmental reminders, and, in cases involving ADHD, appropriate medical support. Let us end with the question that both parties in this dynamic most need to hear answered. What does chronic lateness actually communicate about whether you are valued? The answer based on the research is far less than most people assume. A 2019 study from the University of Amsterdam examining the relationship between lateness patterns and relationship quality found that the correlation between chronic lateness and conscious disregard for others is weak. The vast majority of chronically late people score normally or above on measures of empathy, care for others, and relationship investment. Their lateness pattern does not reflect their valuation of the relationship. It reflects a dysfunctional relationship with time that is largely operating independently of their feelings about the people they are late for. This is frustrating to hear for the person who is always waiting, but it is important information. It means that interpreting chronic lateness as a personal message, "You don't value me enough to be on time," is reading a neurological or cognitive pattern through a relational lens that doesn't fit. The late person is not sending that message. They are enacting a pattern they often genuinely cannot explain and genuinely wish were different. None of which means you have to accept the impact indefinitely. Clear, non accusatory communication about the real cost of the behavior. When you're consistently late, "Why, I feel disrespected and I lose time I can't get back," combined with mutual problem solving around practical strategies is what the research supports. Not cycles of apology and forgiveness that change nothing. What the science tells us is that chronic lateness is almost always a symptom, not a character verdict. The symptom can be addressed. The character is usually considerably better than the behavior suggests. Chronic lateness is one of those behaviors that looks simple and turns out to be a window into the extraordinary complexity of human neurological variation, cognitive bias, and psychological defense. The same behavior, arriving late, can be the consequence of a brain that cannot feel time passing, a mind that consistently constructs over-optimistic future scenarios, an anxiety system generating delays, or in rarer cases, power dynamic being enacted unconsciously. Understanding which one you are dealing with, but in yourself or in the person you're waiting for, changes everything about how to respond. Universal condemnation doesn't work. Universal excuse making doesn't work either. What works is the same thing that works in almost every complex human situation: accurate understanding, honest communication, and the specific intervention that matches the specific mechanism. Are you the late one or the one doing the waiting? Drop your experience in the comments. This is a conversation that needs more honesty than it usually gets.